Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Straag, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Speak with Straag. I am your host, Dr. Straag, and normally I would have a co-host to my side, but unfortunately, she has moved on to better and bigger things. So today's show will be dedicated to former co-host Lola, who was just spectacular and charming, and I miss her, and I would like to see her again, and maybe if our paths cross, they will. But until then, let's begin. Today is all about sacrifice. And when you think about sacrifice, you think about those big-time movie tropes like throwing yourself in the way of a bullet for someone else, or giving away that last piece of meat so that someone else who is starving can have it. It's not always that noble. Not all sacrifice is good. And most times, you are sacrificing without even knowing what it is you're giving up. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was growing up, my father was in the military, and he got shipped off to some godforsaken war, and he was lost in action. It happens. You know, you go into military, things like that occur. And for whatever reason, you can be thrilled about it, you can be mad about it, it doesn't change the fact that it happened. But there was that empty spot as I was growing up of that place. You know, that person who could, throw baseball to you or teach you how to hit on girls, which is why I do not do it very well. I didn't have that person that could help me out like that. And then in high school, I started hanging around the wrong crowd of guys. You know, the ones who were cutting class or smoking or doing any of the bad, cruel stuff that, kids in their teens are stupid enough to think they're good at. Well, I fell in with the wrong crowd, but the wrong crowd had a man who was behind it all, and he was charismatic, and he made it seem like when you were with him that you were the only person in the world, and it seemed like he cared for you, and it seemed like he gave a shit, and I didn't have anyone that gave a shit, I thought. So I went out of my way to impress him. I did all sorts of things he just wanted to know, like, hey, could you deliver this note to these people over here? They're a little behind on their payments. Can we just make sure they get that handled? Or, hey, this elderly lady over here, she's having trouble with one of the local boys messing around with her. Can you teach those boys a lesson? And I did a lot of things I'm not proud of. And I thought that it was because they cared about me. I thought it was because they wanted to be a bigger, stronger part of my life. A lot of things happened near the end of my time with him, but for 5 years, I sacrificed myself, my future, my very identity to be close to this person. And those bad things I did caught up to me. I went to prison. I was in prison for 8 more years. I sacrificed 13 years of my life for a man that didn't care and just wanted to take advantage of a bunch of young idiot kids that didn't know better. But when you're in the moment, you don't see that as sacrifice. You don't see that as losing time. You think you're building up something. You think you're working towards something. You think there's some bigger goal. There's no goal. And I fell right in. Not every sacrifice is good and noble and pure. And when we sacrifice too much, we may find that there's nothing left for ourselves to keep going, to keep moving. It's hard, and it's lonely. And even if you think that it's for the greater good, you need to think bigger and wider than all of that. You need to think about you. Each and every one of you out here deserve to be cared for and loved and appreciated. And maybe some of you think you are, and maybe some of you think you don't. Well, guess what? Are you in my city? Are you in my Los Santos? I give a shit. I care about you. If you need someone to talk to, please find that person that you think cares. Tell them it is okay to ask for help. Sacrificing your dignity to make sure that you're able to walk and move and continue to be who and what you are, that's a noble sacrifice. I'll lose my dignity all day, every day, if that means that I can make this world a better place. It's scary out there on these streets, you know? So what about you? Have you had to sacrifice something? Do you feel that you've put in effort and time into something and it just didn't pan out? If anyone would like to come up and discuss something, I would be happy to talk with you. All you have to do is just raise your hand and I'll pull you out of the audience. Otherwise, I'm just going to pace back and forth and talk to myself. Which, you know, normally I'd be making fun of Lola right now, but, you know, man, I hope she's doing all right. You know, I had to give up working at EMS to start running to be the mayor of this town. I mean, I didn't have to. Like, after I turned in my resignation, I was told by the Department of Justice I didn't have to do it, but Alec made it seem like it was a pretty important thing that I not be tied into the EMS system while also campaigning for mayor. I get it. I understand. I lost doctor money to try to make the world a better place. And that's been for months now, and the city's been a little slow about making it happen, sure. And I could complain about losing that money or losing that time while I just sit here waiting for hopefully the future. But you know what? It doesn't always have to be that way. I'd like to think of it slightly differently. I'd like to think that it's giving me more time to be out here talking to the people like you. You know, caring about the stuff going on. Finding out more about what you guys want and need. It's not just about fast cars and loose women. Although I wouldn't honestly drive a fast car. I'm a motorcycle kind of guy. And that women stuff, I've already got a girlfriend. But, you know, it's still awkward sometimes, you know? You think, what is it going to take to make that kind of a difference? What do I have to do? What do I have to give up to actually change the world? Even if it's just a small section of it. A small little, tiny little cluster, like right here. Well, you would be surprised how little it takes to make a big fucking difference. You know, there are people out there who are just having bad days, you know? And you could see them pacing around, frustrated and irritated and spouting out nonsense. And you could take that moment, if you have it, because let's face it, we don't all have the opportunity or the experience to do this. It's easy with my training and from this high horse I'm sitting on. It's easy for me, but it's not easy for everyone else to just say, "Hey, is everything all right? What's going on?" You might be surprised that that person just needs to just get that shit out of them, you know? They just need to have someone actually give a shit. And it's hard for me anyway to see people out there who are suffering in any capacity, just like actual suffering. It crushes me. It feels like a punch to the stomach every time I see it. Someone gets kidnapped and thrown in a liquor store, gun to their head. That's terrifying. No one should have to go through that. I've been held hostage more times than I'd like to admit. And I know there are other people who have been held hostage far more than I have. But even one time is still one time too many. I see people sleeping on the streets. They can't even get an apartment at Alta. For whatever reason. It breaks my heart. There was a young man who was in town. Some of you may have known him. His name was Zed. And when I found that he was homeless and sleeping in a rose bush outside of Alta instead of in the apartments, I went with him to the office manager. I went and I filled out the paperwork. I co-signed on his fucking apartment. I needed to make sure that he had a roof over his head because it was too painful for me to see him suffer. And he might have said, "Oh, no, man, Dr. Straag, don't worry about that. It's all good." But we all deserve basic decency. We all deserve, love, appreciation, compassion. And giving out that compassion, it's a little bit of a sacrifice. So you sacrifice your time, your mental energy. Some sacrifice is beautiful and rewarding, and it means the world. It's just important to know what you're sacrificing and for who. Because it's not just a matter of, am I going to get the most out of this? Or am I going to somehow get a lot of stuff or whatever? Am I going to get the most significant others with this process? Am I gonna have the fastest car? Am I gonna have the biggest amount of money in my bank account? No, none of that shit ultimately matters, because at the end of the day, we're all gonna fucking die. And then what? Your time and your effort on this planet is finite. You can only do so much. Please pick and choose what you want to spend your time doing. Pick and choose the connections you want to make to other people. They're important. You're important. It's hard. And not every decision's going to be right. No. Not every decision is going to be right. But you know what? That's okay too. Because at the end of the day, we're all spinning on a giant blue marble, going hundreds of thousands of miles per second, spinning through space in a cold, unfeeling universe that does not give a shit. And that's why we have to. That's why we do. That's why I hope you do too. And if you take anything away from today's episode, anything at all, I hope that you figure out the difference between what is worth sacrificing for and what you're sacrificing is for. If that doesn't make sense. Let me try that again. If you are sacrificing for something else bigger and better than you, I hope it's worth it. And I hope it means something. I hope it means something more than just me for you right now. I want you guys to go out there and just leave the world better than we found it. Because the world's kind of shitty. But if we just try a little bit, if we sacrifice just a little bit to make life easier and happier for the other people around us, maybe we'll be all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take care of yourselves, all right? It's hard. But I'm here for you, even if you don't think anyone else is. And I promise you, there are other people who care too. So stay safe out there, all right? And have a great night.
Woo woo woo! Yeah.
Okay.